Welcome to Counting the Cost, Al Jazeera's weekly business programme. I'm Lauren Taylor. In the wake of General Motors' bankruptcy, we ask if the future is green for the US auto industry and bring you economic news from around the world. A bright star in a dark sky. In a climate of shrinking economies, Qatar bucks the trend. Money woes in Manila, riding out the recession in the Philippines. And EU banking basics, we shine a light into the dark corners of Europe's central banks. I'll be joined by colleagues in our centres in Asia, Europe and the Americas to give you a unique global view of the continuing economic crisis. But first, after losses of more than $82 billion in the last 4 years and mounting debts, General Motors has filed for bankruptcy. But what is its future? From the Americas, here's Shihab Ratanzi with more.
General Motors lost its ranking as the top global automaker for the first time in 2008 to Japan's Toyota. The company had been technically bankrupt for the last 4 years, but had been propped up by the belief among investors that it was too big to fail. The gas-guzzling Hummer perhaps provides the best illustration of how out of touch GM had become. Its fuel consumption of 14 miles per gallon compared unfavorably with models such as Toyota's Prius, which averages 51 miles per gallon. The Obama administration had already pumped more than $19 billion into General Motors before the bankruptcy announcement. But the company will now receive another $30 billion from the US government, amounting to a 60% share of the business. But will this takeover result in General Motors adopting the green policies of the Obama administration? Sebastian Walker reports.
What we have then is a credible plan that is full of promise.
Telling America that its biggest auto manufacturer was filing for bankruptcy, US President Barack Obama described it as an opportunity for change.
Today will mark the end of an old GM and the beginning of a new GM. A new GM that can produce the high-quality, safe, and fuel-efficient cars of tomorrow, that can lead America towards an energy-independent future.
Under the bankruptcy plan, GM will sell off its gas-guzzling Hummer brand and start producing smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. This Michigan town is hoping that could help keep their factory from closing. But the current small scale of the green overhaul means the future is still uncertain. Under President Obama's restructuring plans for General Motors, this now idle plant could be turned into a small car manufacturing facility as part of efforts to make GM greener and more environmentally friendly. But there's only one of those contracts up for grabs, and this site is facing competition. Lake Orion is vying with other towns across America to become the new GM's only US small car producer. Nevertheless, White House Auto Recovery Chief Ed Montgomery says a green revolution is on the way.
Dr. Montgomery, this is a president who came to the White House promising to be the greenest president in America's history. He's now in control of General Motors, a company not exactly known for its track record on the environment. What are you doing to ensure that environmental standards and fuel efficiency are at the very top of the agenda?
We need to have a green transformation in all of our auto companies, not just General Motors. We need to transform the economy to make it a green economy going forward. That's part of our future.
But environmental campaigners in Michigan say GM's current restructuring plan is a missed chance for a truly transformative approach.
I think that we need to be more creative about the restructuring of the automobile companies. And how many more cars do we expect to sell in this country when there's almost 2 to 1 car per person or car per driver in the United States? What I think that we should do is transition the auto companies into transportation companies.
General Motors transformed into a mass transit provider may be hard to imagine. Then again, these days it's hard to make any assumptions about the future of the US car industry. Sebastian Walker, Al Jazeera in Lake Orion, Michigan.
Let's talk more about the possibilities of a new, greener GM. We're joined by Warren Brown, an auto industry columnist for the Washington Post. So what do you think? Green opportunity from a crisis?
I don't mean to be impolite or impolitic, but this is all rubbish, okay, for several reasons. First of all, the idea that GM is now going to become green as if GM weren't green, speaks to an ignorance of what GM has been doing. GM aggressively had been moving, towards more fuel-efficient vehicles for more than 10, 15 years. They just weren't doing it the way Toyota was doing it. GM at first wanted to go straight to hydrogen. Toyota said, well, no, we'll do gas, electric, Prius technology.
But let's look to the future. This is an opportunity for GM and for the Obama government to really make a difference. Instead, they're looking at GM as a financial concern once again, and there's some suspicion that in the end, there'll be more factory closures. The China policy of outsourcing manufacturing will still continue and so on, when what the Obama administration could be doing is using the $60 billion to utterly rehaul these factories, make mass transit, make greener cars, which may not be popular at the moment, retrain their staff and so on. Instead, we're using this financial model instead of a green manufacturing model.
But that's wonderful liberal socialist thinking that has nothing to do with the realities of the marketplace. Look, moving towards a more green, automotive environment is a two-part equation. It's industry and it's consumers. You're not going to force consumers in this country to buy what they don't want to buy. And you aren't going to help them to focus more on green cars or more fuel-efficient cars if you also have a policy of keeping the cheapest gasoline in the developed
Absolutely.
world.
So then you also perhaps put a $2 tax on gas and so on. We are also facing, environmental catastrophe after all. This is an emergency. It's not simply a manufacturing emergency. And of course, in Japan and everywhere else, they get an enormous amount of government subsidy in order to become greener producing manufacturers. So why not do the same here?
Emergencies exist only if people perceive them to be emergencies. And look, talk to any auto company around the world. These aren't stupid people. They have known for a long time that there's only so much oil to be gotten, okay? They have known for a long time that, we eventually will run out of the stuff. And if you run out of the stuff, what are you going to do to power your cars? Which is why, they have had billions of dollars of investments into coming up with more fuel-efficient cars, alternative fuel cars. They aren't doing it primarily because they're worried about the economy. They're doing it because they understand that oil is not forever. I don't care why they're doing it. I just care that they're doing it.
Warren Brown, thank you for bursting our idealistic bubble.
Well, while many nations continue to reel from the effects of the global recession, Qatar is expected to post the highest economic growth in the world this year. The International Monetary Fund is predicting a 1.3% rise this year for the 6 nations that make up the Gulf Cooperation Council. Qatar is a member, while Qatar's economy is expected to expand by at least 15%. Over the next 3 years, Qatar, which has the world's 3rd largest natural gas reserves, plans to double gas output and boost sales to $153 billion. Well, this small state with a population of just over 1 million has the world's 2nd highest per capita income after Liechtenstein at $101,000. So, how has it managed to dodge the global recession? Nashra Nasruddin reports.
Qatar, one of the few success stories to emerge from the ongoing global financial crisis, and a nation determined to harness this success to promote sustained growth. This futuristic building is the new Qatar Science and Technology Park. Khalid al-Muhannadi is one of a younger generation of Qataris using the education he gained abroad to play a part in his country's development.
This is the long-term strategy that the leaders of this country don't want what happened to their grandparents, the hustle they had in the past, to happen to the future kids. I mean, the oil and gas, it's more than enough. Where are you going to use this money? What are you going to do with this money? Do you just want to spend it and just stay home?
For al-Muhannadi, this is not an option. And like elsewhere in the country, ambitious plans are underway for further extensions to the park. It's a very different picture to Dubai, where the financial crisis hit the construction business hard. Mustafa Hussein is the managing director of a company supplying engineering materials to the construction industry in Qatar.
For a general view, we have not been affected because overall, if you take in both level of companies, the big ones and the smaller end, we've seen growth actually better than last year.
The financial crisis hasn't completely bypassed Qatar. The property market, though still healthy for this region, weakened. The Qatari stock market, once one of the best performers in the Arab world, took a nosedive. The government was quick to step in, implementing a number of interventions to help stabilize the economy. It took out stakes of up to 20% in Qatari banks and offered to buy into real estate investments. shares surged and investors began to breathe a sigh of relief.
I think in very broad terms, we've probably had the best financial crisis of many countries around the globe. You cannot isolate yourself from what's happening in the rest of the world. But the severity of the impact has been very low.
Per capita, Qatar is already one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And that wealth goes a long way for a tiny population of 1.5 million, less than a fifth of whom are nationals.
5 years ago, our profit was, we used to make $200–300 million a year. Today we make it in 2 months. And if I go back to all the strategy document that I have 5 years ago, I don't think this was nothing that we thought it's going to happen.
But going back even further reveals the changing face of a traditionally nomadic Bedouin society. Like many countries in the Gulf, the petrodollars fashioned a very different Qatar. This is Souq Waqif. It's a traditional market and one of the remaining landmarks of Old Doha. It's a rare reminder of a city that has almost completely disappeared since oil was discovered in the 1940s. After they found oil, the Qataris had another surprise waiting for them, one that would prove even more profitable.
Natural gas is what made Qatar. There's a lot of natural gas in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of natural gas in Kuwait, Oman. They all have natural gas. But Qatar has a disproportionately large amount.
The Qataris were prepared to take a chance. They developed the technology necessary to liquefy the gas, making it much easier to transport, and they are now reaping the dividend. The vast amounts of money flowing into the country have created a consumerist society. Some said Qatar was competing with Dubai as a luxury destination for business and tourism, but the similarities end there.
We're not focusing only on one sector like tourism sectors or service sectors. We have multiple sectors like energies, health, education, tourism, international conferences. So I think Qatar has a different approach in terms of how they're handling the local economy.
Despite the global credit crunch, Qatar is predicted to be one of the world's fastest growing economies this year. But the Qataris continue to be cautious.
The government of Qatar is very aware that it's great to be an oil and gas producer at the moment, but that may not persist. In 10 years, there may be an alternative. The government of Qatar has made it very plain that it wants to ensure the future of the country, and that has to happen through diversification.
And this diversification strategy may prove to be the vital lifeline in these uncertain times. Nashwa Nasruddin, Al Jazeera, Doha.
Now, after the break, we find out if Europeans are kept in the dark about the state of their banks.